It's 4 o'clock, right?
Fix, push the live button.
You're live.
All right, so we're talking about jerk baits today, right?
Yeah, we're talking about seasonal jerks.
What? We're talking about jerk baits.
Yeah,
So-
and like I want to kick off the show with talking about seasonal jerks because I have a bone to pick.
Well,
Let's hear it. What do you got?
All right, my biggest seasonal jerk, straight up, is Santa Claus.
Why is this? Because you're Jewish?
No,
What do you got against Santa Claus?
I actually think, like, it's a little known fact, but both Jesus and Santa were Jews.
Well, I beg to differ. Scott would tell us that that Santa was a Viking.
You know what? He might have been.
Yeah, he might be right. Jew, Viking, it's okay.
Santa,
It's fine.
yeah.
Santa.
So what do you have against Santa? Why is he a jerk?
All right, I don't have anything specifically. Look, don't get me wrong. I'm not a claustrophobe here, but we go from Halloween and we like leapfrog over Thanksgiving right into Christmas, and the whole thing feels like very disingenuous to me. It's like we're being manipulated by big tinsel. You know, people just want us to spend money, and so Santa Claus is the representative of that nonsense. So I got a bone to pick with Santa. Like, I think that Santa should stay in the closet, until Black Friday. Till Black Friday.
No,
Let him out.
So I'm going to tell you, Christmas trees up at the house.
Already?
Stockings are up. Yes, of course. It's the
No
time.
way.
Santa's the man. So you got to remember, kids and Jack Skellington and Nightmare Before Christmas. It's like Halloween, Christmas. Why are you hating on the season? Santa's
I love
no jerk.
this. I just
Hold
can't
on.
believe you've got it already set up.
My wife, like, we have like these bins, and it's like this
I've got
production.
those
We
bins.
march the bins in. So the Costco bins, the black with the yellow lids, they're all labeled. Stockings, ornaments, trees up. Kids have their ornaments every year. The family ornaments go up. It's done. Like, the house is ready. Don't be hating on Santa.
Wow.
I'm not hating on Santa permanently. I'm hating on Santa
Just for a little,
All right.
like a month,
Right
like a month
now.
of Santa.
right now. Look, I'm not a Christmas tree hugger until Black Friday.
Oh my God. All right. Let's start this show.
Hey guys, it's me. I'm back. What's up, party people? We're like, Mass, come on.
All right. This show is taking a turn for the. All right. Well, welcome to another episode of Monster Bass Live. Today we're talking about jerk baits, unless Raphie decides he wants to continue his hate for Walmart and all things big tinsel.
First of all, I never said Walmart, although that is a good point. I really don't like Walmart. But I mean, yeah, it's. I just think it's disingenuous. I think that it's like, I think we're all being manipulated by the machine, by big tinsel. You know, because what? Halloween is a $12 billion business.
It's amazing.
Yeah, Christmas is what? $130 billion business.
Yep.
Nobody buys Thanksgiving cards. Nobody buys turkey decorations. Like, Thanksgiving is what? Like an $11 business. So that's why it's just, we have Christmas pushed down our throat, like at the stroke of midnight, August 31st into November 1st. And all of a sudden we now have to get into the Christmas spirit. Like, I'm not
we
ready.
get to get into the Christmas spirit.
I know he's looking at it all wrong. It's all perspective. I'm Chris Kringle. I own the Santa Run in Sacramento for 8 years. It's about celebrating family, coming together. It's perspective. We love it. Santa's.
I
all good.
understand it's not. Why is Thanksgiving not about celebrating family and coming together?
It is.
It is. See,
and that's why you're going to Knott's Berry Farm.
That's true. That's true.
Way to go. All right.
It's all good.
We got
Let's
invited.
go.
We got invited nowhere, and maybe I just have resting Grinch face.
That's right.
All right. So we're going to talk about jerk baits today and fishing them in cold water and the differences and the colors and when and why and the cadence and all that fun stuff. So that the next time Raphie wants to go celebrate Christmas or not celebrate Christmas, he knows what to throw in the water. So, but before we do, let's let's thank everyone for taking time out of their day to be with us. I can't see the chat because it's too far away, but we're going to fix that when, well, Fix is going to fix that. And then I'll have a screen right in front of me. I can see the chat and everything. But, hey, I want to remind everyone why we're here, and that's to celebrate our love for fishing. And our goal is to help you have more fun the next time you go fishing. Hopefully you catch your PB. And we'd like to think we've helped more people catch their PB than anyone else. And I want to celebrate a few people that have sent their PBs in. And if you want to, you can go to monsterbass.com/PB, submit your pick. And if we use it, we'll send you some stuff. I want to acknowledge 5 people that have caught their PB fix. If you could put those up on the screen for me. We got Todd Camp. Todd Camp caught a 10-pound, 4-ounce swamp donkey on apparently a free line with wild shiner. I'd like to
Does
know
that count?
I think it counts. I mean, listen, he caught a 10-pound fish.
Yeah.
So, all right, let's go to congratulations to him. Zachary Mason, 6 pounds, 4 ounces in Iowa. He caught this on a whopper plopper. Larry Robinson, 5 pounds, 2 ounces on a wacky rig in North Carolina. And Lee Sutton. Wasn't Lee Sutton a closer for the Chicago Cubs back in the 80s? I could be wrong.
Wasn't that Don Sutton?
No, that was a pitcher for the Dodgers. And it was Carlos Lee, I think. Anyways, Lee Sutton, 8 pounds, 8 ounces in Alabama on a hair jig. And last but not least, Bob Bickerdike, 5 pounds, 2 ounces on a spinnerbait. Congratulations to you guys. We're going to send you a little something in the mail. Great work.
Hey,
Yeah.
Chris.
Yeah.
What's the over under on Bob Bickerdike being a made up name?
You know, I think Bob. I'm going to congratulate Bob. There's some good fish right there. I'm not going anywhere. People's names. It's I
Fair.
mess those up all the time when I'm announcing events. I make names up. So Bob Bickerdike, nice work, my friend.
Yeah.
Congratulations to you and the entire Bickerdike lineage.
Yeah. And if you've caught your PB or you got a catch you're super proud of, just head over to monsterbass.com/PB, upload your pics or send it to marketing@monsterbass.com. Either way, if we use it, we're going to send you a little something and celebrate you and your big fish. So we got plenty more giveaways today. Don't forget, we got the golden tickets. So if you've got a golden ticket, put your golden ticket number in the comments. We're going to give away, let me see. I made up some Monster Bash bags. Ooh, are these the new ones? I don't know, but they're packed full of baits. I got one there. I got another one here. I don't know where the other one is. I got 3 of them that I made up today.
The other one's right here.
Oh, so
The other one,
Chris is going to give one away. Chris, how are you giving yours away?
Depends. Caller. I want a caller that gives us some good information, asks a great question, that just something to do with a caller. So I'm going to go for a caller today.
Okay. How about you, Raphie?
It's same as 2 weeks ago.
So whoever hates Santa Claus the most?
whoever wins the chat. And the weight of my heart might be putting Santa in a timeout until Black Friday.
Okay.
Like, I don't hate Santa. I just don't want him around in most of November.
I get it.
Fair enough. All right.
So, it's the cold weather, and it's important that just because the water's getting colder that you don't give up on fishing. I think it really comes down to just having the right baits, and I think that this month we put together a cold water fishing kit that is going to help you out. Raphie, I think it's actually on the desk next to you in the orange box. Oh, everything but the spinnerbait in that box. We could walk through. So why don't you pull them out one by one, and ask Chris what his thoughts are about fishing. That's a suspending jerkbait.
Done. It's going to catch fish. That's perfect. We could talk about that the rest of the show. So I know Bait Lab does some great baits. I know the people that are designing that. That's a great bait. Then we'll table the discussion that'll lead us into the rest of the show. So number one draw. Good.
So I'm gonna save this one for last. Then we're not gonna show it first.
Pretend we never saw.
Oddly enough, I was talking to Sean Perez, the guy at Bait Labs. Right, I've talked to this guy for 4 years, and part of me was like, all right, this is some side hustle where he just like goes and gets factory baits and puts them out. and because I just couldn't tell, right? And so he says to me, he's like, well, you know, I'm kind of really well known in Europe. I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, I've wrote like 10 best-selling books on this and that. And he goes, I have all these books on Amazon for fishing. And I'm like, you do? And he started sending me links. And it turns out this guy that I'm talking to is like, I don't know, a mini version of Patrick Sebile or something. He's got all sorts of catches. And so turns out he knows what he's doing. So good on him and bad on me. Raphie, what you got next? Flat-sided crankbait.
Yeah, let's we'll I know that's a subject coming up in the future, the flat side. We could talk about, you've got some texture on the bottom that does some interesting things underwater. That's a great thing, especially since I know we're talking cold water, but in a lot of places it's still fish are up shallow. That thing will move across the water, entice a bite. So if you've still got reaction bite up shallow, you can't go wrong with that bait.
Before we go to the next bait, Fix, you don't have the air conditioning on in here. You have the heat on.
Yeah, I want you to feel
The
warm.
heat's on at 75, bro. I'm wearing a hoodie. Yeah.
Well, it is 73 outside, so it's hoodie weather.
Turn that down to like 68, please. I'm dying over here.
The guy that complains when it's below 75 outside, I'm with you. I like to be warm, but you can't
It's
have
a
the
little
heat
warm
on.
right now.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
fine.
What's the next bait you got there, Raphie? A lipless crankbait.
Done. Again, what do you want? I mean, if you're adding these all in a box, lipless, you can catch fish on that any time of the year,
Yeah.
pretty much anywhere. You can throw it shallow, retrieve it fast. You can throw it out, let it sink to the bottom. You can yo-yo it. Can't go wrong with a lipless. So you're
All right.
you're hitting 3 for 3 so far.
3 for 3. What else we got there, Raphie?
What are the ones in here? You said that
There's
there was
a-
one that like
The
wasn't part
the
of it.
spinner bait's next month.
Okay.
Another lipless. Okay. We already talked about
perfect.
that. And we love you, Zuri. All right. Why don't you? All right. So that's a late season, according to Ray Larson, who's the owner of Razor Custom. And if you don't know Razor Custom, they're pretty popular throughout the Midwest tour scene. They're sold in some Shields in the Midwest and quite a few stores. He said this is a late season killer. He said it's a flip and jig that he only uses in the fall. And we paired it with some soft plastics that he recommended. So I think that's I mean, you can fish a jig year round. So, yeah, it's great. KVD. High def cross. You can use those. Carolina, Texas. Pair them with the other hooks. All in all, great baits for this time of year.
Well, there's one in here that I haven't shown. It was hidden in the corner of the box.
Oh,
Jerkbait. Look at that. We should talk about those today.
okay.
We should.
So let's
Oh,
talk
open
about
that-
jerk baits.
Why should we talk about jerk baits?
I mean,
Well, do you want to? Should we jump? Open that thing up, and we want to see that. I want you to see how sharp the hooks are, because that's pretty important on jerkbaits. But pull that thing out. We'll start chatting.
Rick, am I allowed to touch the baits? You know, after the incident.
you can. You're 500 feet away from a school, so it's fine.
Fair enough. Smart. So I think that's a disclaimer. I have a buddy that will not allow treble hook, jerk baits, or spooks on his boat, just because he's had so many incidents with baits being stuck.
Yeah.
So I think be careful over there, Raphie. That's the disclaimer. Before you get into talking about jerk baits, super sharp. The sharpness of the hook is very important. High quality hooks. And normally they're a little smaller gauge. So the penetration ability, it's pretty easy to get a sticky sharp in you.
Yeah, they're
So-
usually
so
like
what
a
do you-
number 6 instead of a
Jerk
4.
bait, penetration, sticky sharp in me. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah,
So I wanted you to open it.
yeah.
Oh, look at that. Look at that thing.
Yeah, so that's hold it from the end so we can see the holographic, because it's got a
Like from the hook?
holographic. Yeah, this is the hollow shad, and there's
nice.
a hologram on the inside that really, look at that. Yeah, you can see it. So it's a good looking bait. You know, when you think about fishing jerk baits this time of year, right? You're like one of the Barker beauties on Price is Right. Easy.
Doing good.
I mean,
Yeah, just
anyway.
Yeah.
But when you think about fishing jerk baits, right? We're thinking about dying, bait fish that, or I mean, Baits that imitate dying bait fish. Oh my goodness, I can't talk.
Right.
Yeah, and when it comes down to it, I think about the two different types, right? Suspending versus floating, and when to fish those. I think about the cadence. I think about the colors. I mean, and when it's cold water and the fish are, we want to hit them when they're suspending, and we want that jerk bait. It's the erratic movement, and there's nothing like fishing at this time of year. It's a high producer. What do you think?
Now, I'm going to tell you, jumping into it, because it gets kind of technical pretty quick.
Yep.
And people get nervous. I think the thing to remember is, as the water's getting cold, fish are moving and figuring out where they're at. I use a jerk bait a lot just as a search bait because it covers a tremendous amount of water. You cast it pretty far away from you, and then you're moving that back. One thing to always remember is the way the jerk bait's designed. It's not to be retrieved by the reel. It's to be retrieved by the twitch and the jerk. Some people call them rip baits because you rip it back. So depending on, you got the slash bait. I just call them a jerk bait, and I'm jerking with a rod, and the rod becomes super important. Knowing if it's too flexible of a rod, it kind of bows and it lags, and then you're slowly pulling that jerk bait instead of snapping it. So you want a rod that actually has some flexibility to keep that fish pinned, because we talked about those hooks that are a little bit smaller than your standard hook, but also it has to be tip stiff, meaning fast action. And so you're jerking this thing back, you've got slack, and it's this twitch that moves, and you hit it right on the head. Is the reason I like a jerk bait more than a lot of other baits is no cast is the same. And the reason I say that is the retrieve, the cadence. I fish kind of like a spaz. And so for me to throw something out and just reel it in the same every time, I can't do that. And so whether it's twitch, twitch, pause, twitch, 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 pause, I think for me, it's one of these things like I get to pretend I tricked the fish into taking the bait, rather than I'm reeling it and I accidentally caught a fish. So for me, that's this whole thought process of a jerk bait is I'm mimicking a fish. I think that's what the fish are keyed into. And then the stuff we talk about, forward facing sonar, what's been learned in the last 5-6 years about fish. We always thought all fish were suspended and people are using jerk baits and they're fishing over brush piles and the fish are just floating. That does happen, and they do suspend, especially around like a bridge or pylons and different things. But a lot of times a jerk bait, because of that action and because of the movement and the sound it makes with the BBs, you can call fish 10, 15, 20 feet. So again, the technical side, clear water, color becomes really important when they come up and they see it. It needs to normally look more natural like a fish, but then you can get crazy colors that when the water's discolored or when it's cloudy, the fish actually will see that because of the color and be more enticing. So we can go, we got a show to talk about, and I want to hear some people's questions, but a jerk bait is one of the most effective baits out there and can be fish. I'm going to drop the name Kevin Van Dam. We got Kevin. He retired. Kevin Van Dam is probably the greatest jerk bait fisherman alive ever. And he won millions of dollars fishing a jerk bait exclusively offshore and would do crazy things. He'd drill holes in his jerk baits and let them fill with water to get them to sink. Mikey Balls just did a great video about how he'd cast out a jerk bait and let it sink for like a minute and get it all the way down. And he's watching with his forward facing sonar and making sure that bait gets all the way down into the front of those fish. And then he starts twitch retrieving it. So I'm excited to talk about jerk baits. I love when people call in and they have some insight, because jerk baits, you're going to put fish in the boat. You mentioned, Rick, a lot of people will quit fishing in the wintertime, or they get nervous, or it's not as successful. Jerk bait is one of the best ways to put fish in a boat. So it's a good topic.
What, when the water gets cold, like do you change up your colors, or is it more around the conditions of the water in terms of whether it's cloudy or clear?
Yeah, I fish almost always something that looks like, I put like 6 different baits out. They all look like fish. They're kind of silver color. And I know we talk about like we got this right here. Happens to say Monster Bass. You're going to see it because it's got your red hook on there. And you think of a jerk bait, if it looks like a fish and it's the forage size of what we've got, the fish are eating, and I think that's showing up pretty good there. A jerk bait to me needs to look like the fish that I'm trying to mimic. And I'm trying to entice this fish that really doesn't need to eat a lot of food right now because its metabolism is slowing down. The bass aren't moving around a ton if it's getting really cold. So I want to present something that looks similar. So as they get close, they see something that looks like a fish. The jerkbait to me, though, is the reality is the twitch, the reaction.
Yeah.
The bass can't stand it. They can't not eat it. And so now you're playing into that predatory mode. Is they're not making a decision like, oh, I've already eaten today and I'm kind of full. That jerk pause, jerk twitch, the evasion of as it goes in front of it and then it's evading away from it, that bass can't process that information quick enough. And I think Raphie said it a while ago, where maybe we give fish too much credit. They have to eat it. They have to come over and see what's going on. Are you stuck yet with your fingers, Raphie? Did you poke yourself with that jerkbait?
No, I didn't poke myself, but I'm getting a bunch of texts from people because our viewership is so low that apparently our live is unlisted. So only the people that bookmarked it can see it, and it's not being broadcast on our channel. So I have not poked myself, but I feel like we poked ourselves on the back end of this live. So stand by.
All right. Well, you know what? They're going to come back.
By. You want me to just sit back and something
No,
happen?
no. Keep talking. Just don't ask me questions yet.
All right. Well, I want to thank everyone for tuning in today, whether you're tuning in live or you're subscribed to our podcast, wherever you like to listen to your favorite podcast. Don't forget to, if you like what you're listening to, give us a thumbs up. And for everyone with a golden ticket, right? There's 3 ways to win. And whether you're asking questions by calling in, or whether or not you've got a golden ticket, don't forget, put your golden ticket number into the chat. And at the end of the show, Fixie will pick 3 winners. He'll pick 1 winner, and Chris will give 1 away, and Raphie will give another away. But today we're talking about jerk baits, the hotline. Let's open it up. So if you got a question about the baits that came in this month's box or fishing jerk baits this time of year, don't forget the hotline's open, 323-210-4180. So there's 2 types of jerk baits, right? We got suspending and floating. And I was reading an article from about that Chris Zaldine, an interview, and he talked about when and why he likes to fish both, because he said that most people only think about suspending jerk baits, and he likes to take a floating jerk bait and throw it in really shallow water, especially late season, whenever he can find vegetation, because where there's vegetation, there's oxygen. And so he said, especially when the water's colder and the water's cloudy, he likes to throw, metallic patterns, your silvers and your golds. And he likes to throw a floating one because he's going to throw it in a lot shallower of water.
Yeah, smart. I
Does
mean,
that make sense?
I agree completely. And you talk about the bill length, like you look at the different baits. I mean, some of them, that really determines how far it's going to dive down that resistance. I think one thing that we miss at times is thinking of the retrieve. As you cast, some people will actually reel it down kind of quick. And I'm not a fan of reeling it first. I actually just jerk the bait down to get in a position if I'm thinking a water column. Once you pause, whether it's suspending, slow sinking, or it's floating, that bait does something different. And I know specifically, like I know your monster bass bait, it's not just going to float up perfectly flat. You've got a wider body, you've got a narrower tail. That wobble on the retrieve, once it pauses and it shakes back and forth and it's lifting. I know that's what Chris Zaldine's talking about, is you pull this bait, and because of that bill in the front, it's angling down. And the second you pause, it wobbles and pulls back. And that's that thing, is the fish see it. It's a dying fish, whether it's going to sink or pause up. The beauty is, if you're in shallow water, there's vegetation. Every time you pause it, it's going to pull up away from those fish. Then you're going to jerk it back down next to those fish. Then it's going to pause and float back up. So there's a beauty in that, allowing you to fish it in an area that's pretty tough to fish. Where other baits, it's the exact opposite. The second you stop reeling them, they're going to sink. And they're going to snag in that grass. So you can cover an area it's kind of a tough spot to fish, especially when you can't get the fish to go all the way to the top. And that's the issue with fish during the day times. They're afraid of birds. They're afraid of being eaten. They're smart predators. And so you need to keep something that's in that water column closer to the grass. So it's very effective to use a bait that floats. I'm a fan of both. The sinking, for me, where I live in Northern California, I need to get the bait right now a little deeper. And so then we start talking about baits that actually can sink, but more specifically baits that have a longer bill out in front of them, and that's going to drive them down deeper to those fish. So I think it's important to understand where your fish are to start always. And like you said, if they're still in the grass, they're shallow, jerkbait's a great tool to use to get those fish to have that reaction bite.
And you sorry, go ahead.
It looks like we got the problem fixed. We were unlisted live, but unlisted. So nobody could see us except for the people that had the link. And the only people who had the link were the ones who set reminders or just clicked on the preview and were with us when we started.
Hey, welcome everyone. All right.
Yeah.
We're good.
Welcome to the show.
Yeah. So I'll answer a question. Somebody asked about line, talking about line with this. And there's Tactical Bassin. If you follow those guys, I know Tim, they did a show a while ago. I think it was 5 or 6 years ago. And they talked about the line. They found out something unique because they do a lot of underwater coverage. And so I like to use fluorocarbon, and I use it as a leader. And a lot of times I'll cast these on braid, and I'll use a braid that's pretty thin. So 20-pound braid, it's going to cut through the water. And then normally around 12-pound to 15-pound, depending on the leader size. They were having issues. They would cast out and twitch, and that bait would twitch forward. And then the bait, as like you're saying, this floating one, the bait would start to go backwards. But because the fluorocarbon had enough memory, because it had been on the spool long enough, it would try to recoil, and it actually wouldn't allow that bait its full slack on the retrieve during the pause. So it's something to consider. I'd never even thought of
Wait a minute.
Yeah.
Explain that to me one more time.
Okay, so if you cast this jerk bait all the way out, and so
Yeah.
I'm going to give you a perfect example. This bait, I'm over here as the fisherman.
Yeah.
I cast it all the way out. I jerk, and the bait comes towards me. Now, I kind of have this slack towards the bait to allow this bait to have full slack. It's kind of, maybe it's floating up or it's sinking. Because the line is trying to coil with the line memory, the line is coiling back up. Like if you can imagine a slinky, it's so this bait, as it's jerking, and it's kind of sitting there. Now it's slowly coming towards the rod just because of the line memory. So it's like, wow, that's a big light bulb. They said they were not catching fish. They didn't know what was going on. It was one rod to the next. And it's because the line on the one rod was pretty old, and it had the memory of being around those coils long enough. So that really shows you Kevin Van Dam. It's like one guy said, Claude Van Dam, that he's the greatest jerkbait fisherman over in the comments.
He only fishes with the splits.
That's right. He talks about always being on slack. So when you twitch this, you have to put your rod tip back towards the bait and allow that bait to pause fully on slack. And that's the issue, is this bait needs to have that slack. The other reason is that slack allows you to snap the bait back. If there's no slack, as you think you're jerking or you think you're snapping, you're going to be slow pulling that bait. So that bait, instead of snapping from side to side, is going to kind of wiggle and wobble. I did have a friend once, and he proved everything I believe about a jerkbait wrong. And we would go fishing, and he had a jerkbait, and he didn't know what it was because he was not an experienced angler, and he would fish it like a crankbait. And I'm here to tell you, he caught a lot of fish casting and retrieving. And if you look at a jerkbait, and I've been out with friends, and we were out on our pontoon boat, and a buddy of mine casted out his jerkbait. We were trolling, going about 4 miles an hour, and his jerkbait is just wiggling behind us. He still caught a fish. And this friend of mine caught a lot of fish casting and retrieving his jerkbait. So it did work. You think it's just a long crankbait, but crankbaits are made specifically for that. So these baits, the way they work, the way they dart, the way they move, they're meant to be fished a more successful way. And that is truly jerking or ripping them through the water. So it's one of the greatest ways. I tell people, and I took this on, it's about 2 years ago. I didn't fish these a lot, and I fished them where I could catch fish, but again, it was more like an accident. I didn't know why I would switch baits. I didn't know why I was switching colors. So I wasn't making those micro adjustments to be more successful. I said, I'm going to catch 100 fish. And I went through the whole idea of, I would be out my kayak. I would have this area through this point I would drift through, and I would start to understand the cadence. I would understand the depth I was fishing at. I'd understand the different shapes of jerk baits, whether they're wider in the back, understand how far you can cast them because of the BBs and having things with that weight that transfers. And then I started fishing some. Once it got really pressured, and I think I did this to my own lake, then I switched to silent with no rattles. And once the fish, I think they got wise to even what I was doing in this one area, then I switched to no rattles. And if the fish are, if they're seeing the same bait all the time, you throw something with no BBs in it, no rattles, they're feeling the water being displaced by a jerkbait moving. Yes, they can hear the rattles, but if they feel it, they got to go see what that is. And so this water that's a solid volume being pushed by a jerkbait hits against that lateral line, and all those little hairs and whiskers that they basically, they feel the jerkbait moving. They go over and see it. They're going to eat it every time. And that's the beauty of knowing it looks just like a fish. And you start really looking at like what you do. I know this monster bass one, I'm going to hold it up a bunch. I mean, you got these marks on the side, iridescent. This thing is going to shine like crazy. And so if you've got this thing with an eyeball on it, you've got your red hook up front, whether it's bleeding gills or whatever, the fish is going to come up as it's swimming at that pretty quick, and it's going to think it's a fish and it's going to bite it. One thing I will say is people don't understand why you go to 2 hooks at times versus 3 hooks. There's a specific thing that you can actually get away with a little bit bigger hook on a 2 hook bait. So if you're catching fish and you're like, wow, I'm really getting into some pretty big fish, having those really small triple, I'll show you the difference here. We've got one here with 3. And those are pretty small. And then you look at this thing with 2. I would much rather fight a 6, 7, 8 pound bass on this guy than this guy.
Sure.
And that's just the reality of having this opportunity. And that's what I started to realize is I would catch a fish and I would hook into it. And it's a really big fish and they're coming up, they're really aggressive. And sometimes they would shake that bait that has the 3 small treble hooks. If you're seeing that happen, switch quickly to something that's close that has 2 bigger hooks. You can set the hook a little deeper and you have a much better chance of landing that fish. So you get pretty specific of what goes on with the jerkbait, but there's a lot of good information out there. And this is just touching it. I mean, we'd have to cover this for like 5 shows to figure out what to do with the jerkbait, but spot on figuring out something that looks like a fish. Monster bass. Can we show us that one, Raphie? I want to talk about that bait from Bait Labs if we can.
Yeah, but before I do, can we just back up a little bit and catch everybody up? Because we now have, I feel like we lost maybe about 50 listeners that tried and couldn't find us because we were unlisted instead of live. So to all of you that are joining us now, thank you for joining us. Today's episode is all about cold water jerkbaits. I have a problem with Santa Claus showing up before Black Friday. And if you put your golden ticket number in the chat, you will win a bag like this. Chris is giving away. You may win a bag like this if your number is picked. Chris is going to send somebody a bag just like this when he picks a winner from somebody who is who calls in. And for me, you may win a bag like this if you win the chat best comment. And so far it's Trevor English, who thinks that the technical difficulties were due to the fact that Santa heard me and hates me.
You might not be wrong. I
was gonna say I agree. The elves are out there. It's you're messed up. I don't know what to do. I'm staying far away from you. I'm glad you're not on my Christmas list right now. You're getting cold.
Thank you.
Hey, we have some people. The haircuts.
I love Cole.
All right. Well, you're getting some. So forward-facing haircuts. They're talking about my hair, your hair products, forward-facing haircuts. I guess that's the new thing. I didn't know what happened over here. We were asked by a couple people 30 minutes if we can go back and just repeat everything we said. So we're just going to start over.
Sure. Or why don't you? I know that you're looking for people to call in, and the person who asks like the best question or whatever the criteria is wins the Chris prize. What are we having people calling in for? What do we want them to talk about?
I want to hear some idea. I mean, I have a couple people that said the favorite bait is the jerk bait, caught their best fish on it. Let's hear some stories, some success stories, some fail stories. See if you got questions. It's all about jerk bait. Let's go.
All right, there it is.
Sorry about that, guys. I'm looking outside and I hear you guys talking about jerk baits, and I see my dog looking at me through the window barking.
It's all sad. All right. Well, so Rick, you're
Yeah.
talking about the Bait Lab jerk bait.
Yeah.
Did you get any insight to that bait of why they designed it the way they did, or can you tell us anything about that particular bait?
Yeah, he told me that he's a big fan of the metallic, and like many of us, and you alluded to it, Zaldine has alluded to it, and so he wanted to create a jerk bait that had the metallic, but the metallic, the hologram was on the inside, so that you could have color on the outside, but when you fished it, not on a cloudy day, when you fished it on a sunny day, because of the hologram on the inside, it was going to show the colors differently than it normally would. And it would just give the fish something just a little bit different than they're used to seeing. And again, I haven't thrown it, but I did send out about 20 of these things, and every person I threw them to loved them. The interesting thing was the comment about the hooks, because I think these are a size 6. And someone was like, "I'd like this bait with a 4." But that comes down to personal preference. I'm trying to get him on the show so he can talk about it before the end of the year, because I do think that he could lend a lot to this conversation. I was hoping he could be there. He could be on this show today, but he's actually in Germany, and so it'll probably be in the middle of the night. So I don't know if that's going to work.
Call him up. Let's get him. No, I love it. And that's the thing is the size 4 is kind of a standard size that a lot of baits will have on there. And that's changing jerk bait hooks is kind of an interesting thing, because when you have these brands that test them, and when you're talking about a suspending or slow sinking or floating, when you start changing hooks, you're going to change how it interacts with the water and what the action does. So, and I think there's something to be said. That's kind of cool. You can actually change one hook to be a little bigger. When you jerk it, it's going to dart. Don't be afraid to test some stuff and mix some things up, because you might find the magic combination that works amazing in your body of water. It's always nice to have two that you can compare one to the next. We had a question about the rod. I think the rod for me is this medium to medium heavy. I tend to go on the lighter side of the rod because I was in a kayak for so many years, and the lighter rod has just more flex, and more flex when you get this fish right next to the boat. A lot of times I'm landing fish and I wasn't using a net. And if you imagine that hook, it's pretty small, is in the lip of that fish. And every time it moves and jiggles and tries to get off, that hook hole is getting a little bigger. And so that rod that can absorb that and keep that hook pinned, a lot of times I'll use a little bit softer rod. And so the softer medium, but it's definitely has to be a fast action. The tip needs to respond when you twitch. It has to have enough backbone to move that bait on a quick retrieve. So, and it really comes up to the size of bait. Like you can go to these jerk baits that you got a jerk bait, and a lot of times they're measured in millimeters. A 90, this is like an 85. And now we're going up to something that's like 6.5 inches long. So I'm going to use a medium heavy on this. I'm for sure using a medium rod on this. And again, you're talking about what works successful for me. Hopefully folks are trying it and putting it to use. Rods are specific. I wouldn't recommend boat flipping fish with a jerk bait. That's an issue with having these smaller hooks. You're going to probably bend some out straight. There's some brands that have some hooks that are kind of kinked, and that's anytime you have a kink in a hook like that, that's kind of a stress point that can flex back out instead of the rounded bend. So you'll see, I've had enough time with jerk baits that if you haven't caught enough fish to bend out hooks and flare them and bend them back and then finally break off some of the barbs, you haven't spent enough time with your jerk baits yet, because that's what will happen is you're going to break off some hooks and then you have to swap them. And that's when you get to start to play around with the different hooks on the jerk bait.
Now, when you're fishing jerk baits and you're switching between like an 85 and a 110, and you talked about the two different type of rods, are you swapping out the line? Are you using different line for each rod, or using probably the same type of line?
Same type. And it really depends for me is what size fish I'm going after and what's going to happen. 12-pound for me is really safe. If I think I'm going to get some really big fish, just to be able to lay into the fish and set the hook, I might go to 15. When I'm fishing the Delta, and I did that this summer and we were fishing some tournaments, I had 15-pound just because the water's so dirty. And a fish on a jerk bait is not going to be line shy. They're not going to come up And normally if it's discolored water, be spooked because they just can't see the line. It's fluorocarbon. But if you have really clear water and it's gin clear and you're going after smallmouth, you got to be careful with your line because the fish will be called to it. They're going to hear it or feel it from far away. They're going to swim up and they're going to be like, I see your line. I'm out of here. That's not something that I want to eat. So then your line becomes really critical. And then you might have to go down to like 10 pound. And then you're dealing with a big fish. The cool part about a jerkbait is you really don't have to set the hook hard. The hooks are so sharp and they're so small, it's easy to penetrate. Sometimes you get a foul hook. All these different things that we talk about, again, what happens to a fish that comes up, they hear this bait, they see it, they get close, and they kind of turn and you twitch, and then you catch that fish in the side of its face. You got to key into that. The reason that they normally turned is they got close and they probably didn't like the color or they didn't like something about it. And that's when you're catching fish, but they're not fully committing. And that's when you might make a color change. That's when you might be like, hey, I might go to something that has a little iridescent blue on it or something to entice the fish all the way to commit to the strike. And so that's when we start talking about tweaking.
Speaking of not fully committing, let's take this next call.
Let's do it.
Or the first call.
Yes, the first call. Go ahead, caller. You're on the air.
Gentlemen, what's happening? I just had to call, and I feel like I'm missing you guys. I had to call in and be a part of what you're discussing.
Yeah, we're talking about forward-facing sonar today.
And haircuts.
Well, in that case,
The forward-facing
just
haircut.
hang up on me because I have no comment for that. I have no opinions on forward-facing sonar. None at all. No opinions.
What about jerkbaits in Texas? Come on, I'm talking California jerkbaits. You got Texas jerkbaits. What's going on in your neck of the woods for jerkbaits right now?
Well, before I get there, I'll have to say it's extremely difficult to concentrate during this conversation with all the manscaping that has been happening here lately with Chris's new haircut. Raphie clearly thought that he didn't look good last show, so I had to get cleaned up for this show. Jared looking better than everybody, even though he's off camera. I mean, just a lot going on here, guys.
It's our new sponsor. Manscaped stepped up and, they're taking care of us. So we had to do our job.
Yep. They're now for your north head as well.
I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to leave it there. I don't want to have that. I don't want to talk about any more of what you're doing with their products.
Yeah.
So, jerkbaits, I think what's interesting, I would love to get your take on this, Chris, but with jerkbaits, let me just kind of go back to like a normal crankbait. I have noticed so many times that I'll be fishing a crankbait, a spinnerbait, a slim jig, an underspin, and all of a sudden I'll stop to like look away or take my hand off, the reel to, look at my phone or something like that. And that's when the fish hits. It's that erratic change of direction. And in my mind, and I have to use my mind here because I don't cheat and use forward-facing sonar, but in my mind, that fish is following the lure and all of a sudden it does something different and that's when they jump on it, right? It's almost like that reactionary cat-like reflexes that we know bass have. So what I think that's what a jerkbait brings to the table the most is that erratic action, the twitching, that fish is there, that's interested, and that erratic action is what causes them to strike. And I love all the underwater videos that, Tactical Bassman or some of these other guys put out there and the action that a jerkbait has. And in my opinion, I actually think a jerkbait is probably underutilized the rest of the year, that it's probably a lure that could be used year round and would still excel, but for some reason we only think of it in colder waters. Would love to get your thoughts on that, Chris.
Yeah, you're saying everything that I'm a firm believer. If you fish with me and I throw a spinnerbait, I throw it out, I fish it, I twitch it. I'm a big believer in that skirt movement. I'm a huge believer in recognizing when you're fishing back a crankbait and it's coming through its water column. When it gets close enough to the boat to start to deflect and come back into the rod, you'll catch 20-30% of the fish at that point where it changes its water column. And so knowing a crankbait needs to deflect, to move, to make things happen. When you have a really nice floating crankbait, a flat-sided crankbait, fish them jerk it, pause it. And that's what Rick was talking about at the beginning. Have that crankbait do something different. There's no reason you have to fish it. That fish underwater with the footage, they're bored. They're following behind that crankbait that's doing the exact same thing. So as the angler that's not hitting a rock or not hitting a laydown or some kind of cover, twitch your rod, do something. For some reason, we only think to do that when we're using a jerkbait. Do that when you're using a spinnerbait. Do it when you're using a chatterbait. Chatterbaits excel so well when they go into grass and you rip it out of the grass. When you're reeling a chatterbait through open water, pop it, rip it like you're fishing it through grass. That's when they get bit, because that bait is a bait fish that's evading something. And the fish are like, oh man, that's obviously something's trying to eat that. I'm going to go and eat it. So you're dead on. I use a jerkbait a ton, and I use it, like I said, to see if fish are in an area, and I use it all summer. This last year, I have 5 boys and they're all fishing a fair amount. And I always say, hey, here's a jerkbait. Here's a Cinco of some sort. You got a soft plastic. Learn to use a jerkbait, because then you go out in the summer. I will tell you, jerkbaits will catch every size of fish. Small fish especially are super reactive. They're not very smart. You start fishing a jerkbait, if you just want to put some fish in the boat, regardless of size, use a jerkbait in the summer. They're going to see it. They're going to hear it. They're going to feel it. They're going to have to eat it. So if a lot of people think, oh, I'm going to use something else, they use something else because they're more comfortable, or it's something they think they're going to actually harvest a bigger fish. A jerkbait, you can catch 7, 8, 9, 10 pound fish on jerkbait, no problem. It does get a little more difficult to land them than when you're dealing with this monster size 8 monster hook that you've got in a swim bait, because then you can boat flip them, or you're fishing with a jig or something. But a jerkbait simply to cover water, to get fish to react all year long, you're spot on.
Yeah, I'll say a couple things, and then I'll hang up, let someone else call in. But I think this Bait Labs jerkbait, this is probably one, in my opinion, one of their best lures so far. Super pumped to see it coming in this month's box. It's I mean, when I first took it out and was looking at it, I mean, it's not one that you just look at and say, okay, that's pretty cool, set to the side. Like you actually grab it, the light hits it, it reflects differently depending on how the light's hitting it. It's a really, really good lure. So pumped to have it. And then you mentioned earlier kind of the 99 size versus the 110. That's another thing to just kind of experiment with when you're on the water. You know, try to match the hatch and the forage size. Obviously, you've got the 2 hooks versus 3 usually when you go to, you know, from one size to another. But then the last thing to really consider with a jerkbait that does matter, you mentioned kind of suspending versus floating, but then also is just like a square bill, is the lip on it or the bill on it and how deep it's going to dive. Does it dive 1 to 3 feet? Does it dive 3 to 5, 5 to 7? You know, is it a medium diving that's going to get down 7 to 10? All of these things matter. So sometimes you think like, well, you know, why do I need so many square bills? You know, or which a square bill is typically 3 to 5 foot diving, somewhere in there, but a crankbait in general is going to dive multiple different depths. The jerkbait's the same type of philosophy. So someone who's new to it, just keep that in mind. Keep that in mind if you're fishing a pond. You know, you're not going to want to probably break out the 7 to 10, you know, foot diving. You're going to want to stick to the 1 to 3 foot or 3 to 5 foot, depending upon how deep it is. You know, if you're fishing, you know, a lake, but you're on a flat, obviously you want to pick the more shallow diving. I know this kind of makes, you know, kind of common sense, but just something to think about, and try to do your best to remember the depths that they dive, because that will make a big difference if you're trying to get down deeper versus trying to keep it shallow. But yeah, good stuff, guys.
Awesome. I'm not going to give you a prize, but I appreciate you calling.
Yeah, I'll hang up on him. Thanks, Lone Star.
I love it.
Did you really hang up on him?
Guy's a good resource. I love that guy.
Oh,
Yeah, he said he was done.
All right. Well, I wasn't. I had a question. I guess I'll just ask.
You didn't raise your hand.
I didn't know that I needed to. I thought it was my show. I could do whatever I wanted. But all right. So, Chris, let me ask you this: jerkbaits, right? And you can have this conversation or regarding anything. You can have it regarding wiggle words. You know, you can have it regarding pretty much any bait that there is. And when I think about like jerkbaits, and I think about some of the older ones that are, call them whatever you want, classics, like the Smithwick Rogue, right? Like
Smithwick. Yep. They're great jerkbaits. Yeah.
Right. But they're not brought up in the same conversation with the other jerkbaits today, right? Today, all we're going to talk about is the Mega Bass 110. Why is that? Like, is it that much better? Because I can name 4 brands that are sold on Tackle Warehouse today that literally just took a Vision 110 and reverse engineered the whole thing. And it's not hard to do, but people won't swear by those the same way that they're going to swear by a Megabass. Why is that?
You know the answer. The answer is called marketing, and they do work. And this is the beauty of understanding fishing and understanding baits as well as you do. And I hope it's okay that I share other brands that I work with. And I know you always say it is okay. I fish with a Molex, and the Molex, I don't even know if I have it because the one that I have is so beat up. There's the Jerk one. I'm going to hold this one up because this is the Finder Jerk 150. Their Finder 110. It's a baby bass. It is literally like 4.5 inches long. It looks like a bass. The rash marks from the hook, there's no color left on this thing. I beat it up. I caught so many fish on that. If you take a bait and you get comfortable with the bait and you learn how to use the bait, I don't care what brand it is, that's going to become your favorite bait. It's because the success, and we talked about this in the past, when you go out and you find a fish and you're using a bait, you have this success and this memory, and then you repeat it and you do it again, you do it again, you do it again. When you have I think I do have a Megabass over here. Actually,
that 85 you showed earlier.
So I have it over here. So we've got this thing right here. These I didn't mention, but those hooks, the hooks are pretty hard to see, but they do have bend points in those hooks, and they're kind of squared off. I've had issues with those as the point where those start to bend out. I've catch so many fish with those. They're great. The +1, the +2, they're awesome. They're a high dollar bait. I promise you those work, but I also promise you any other bait. I mean, KVD has his own line. Right. He's got baits named after him that he's won, again, millions of dollars of success on the highest level of bass fishing. These baits, if you put in your time, it doesn't really matter. It's a little piece of plastic that's hollow that has 3 hooks on it, and you get to do a lot of the work with them. And the reality is if you have paid fishing staff and they're going out and they're pro staff, or they're being paid to market these baits that sell for 2, 3, 4 times the cost of other baits, they're going to have a whole lot more money to pay other anglers to use them and swear by them. And that whole marketing machine starts to tell people, wow, these are the best baits out there. Toe to toe, I don't know if any brand, it'd be fun to do some research and see what's the most used non-paid brand on tour to see who's really catching the most fish. Hands down, I would have to say KVD, again, has probably caught more fish, or is most well known for fishing jerk baits than anybody else. And I mean, you start having baits that look at how simple can you get? You're making something that kind of looks like a fish. It's got a couple. Right. So it's striking. I brought it over here because that bait, what is the cost on those things? You're probably like $12, and you're going out and you're going to catch hundreds and hundreds of fish once you figure out how to make that bait move through the water, mimic a bait fish, put it in front of, literally you put that in front of a bass and you make it twitch and move in a manner that you can't duplicate by reeling it or doing anything else. You twitch it, and depending on which way it's leaning or what's going on, they're always erratic. They're always different. And that's what makes those fish eat them. So I'm a fan of trying different brands. And it's fun that Jeremy said that new one from Bait Lab looks really good. I promise you, take that bait out if you had not used jerk baits. It is good enough. And sometimes we get so worried about, is it the best? I promise you it's good enough to catch some fish. And that's what you really need to focus on.
Yeah, I don't disagree. Do we have someone trying to call in?
We sure do.
Well.
Hello, fellas. How's it going?
Great. How are you?
Good. Marty Party.
Mr. Marty.
Oh, Marty, how are you, sir?
Good. How are you?
Groovy.
Marty, what did you do this evening?
I actually got to take my wife out to dinner for the first time since she started having all these medical issues since July. So it was a very good evening for us.
That's nice.
Good for you. That's awesome.
So
Yeah, we've been through quite a bit, and she's getting better every day.
it's great. Good to hear.
So hey, listen, you're talking about the jerkbait, and I find a couple other things that you haven't mentioned yet is the type of conditions in which you would fish a jerkbait in. I'm not going to throw jerkbait when the water is glass calm. It's not going to work for me. Right now here in Virginia, really the flutter spoons and the blade baits are really on fire now. The jerkbait bite has pretty much gone away because the fish are really transitioning into deeper water. But I found using a jerkbait this spring over those fresh, just kind of sprouting up grass beds, using a jerkbait with a little bit of chop on the water, and it was really surprising. Bluebird sky days were the best for me. A little breeze, finding those new weed beds, that really seemed to work for me using a jerkbait. So what do you consider the optimum conditions for throwing a jerkbait? As in, do you want windy? Do you want calm? Do you want, what are you actually looking for?
So optimum is the easiest way to catch fish. I'll load that up. The reality is if fish are not scared, a bluebird day with high sun, high visibility, no water texture is dead for everything. The reason is the fish are nervous. These are fish for millions of years have been being eaten by other predators. So they're going to be hesitant. You've got to trick them into calling them out. You mentioned a couple things which are great. Blade baits, flutter spoons, those are baits that you're bringing what would look like a wounded bait fish all the way down right in front of the fish's face, probably serving it up. Where the Uber Eats, we were teasing about being the Uber Eats of bass fishing, you're bringing the bait all the way down to them. It's pretty tough to get a jerk bait to the bottom. Again, Mikey Balls did a video. He let that jerk bait. So if you want to fish a jerk bait similar to a flutter spoon, it's kind of boring. You got to cast it out there. You got to let it sink all the way down to the bottom and then jerk it right in front where that blade bait or that flutter spoon has been collecting fish. Perfect conditions. Give me a little texture. Give me current. Give me a little cloud cover. Those fish are feeling feisty. They're going to come up. They're a little bit braver. They're going to come towards the top and feed. The current is a huge thing. If you think of the water movement from wind, water's constantly moving in your lake. And especially right now during this fall pattern is the turnover of lakes. And we haven't even talked about turnover. Now we got cold water. The cold water sometimes will settle. The hotter water is going to come up. We went from having our hot water at the top of the lake and the cold water at the bottom during the summer to now we're going to have our coldest water. And actually it's warmer for those fish to be down deep. And that's why the fish are transitioning. So it's this whole mind-bending understanding of what's really going on. The nutrients are flipping over, the oxygen levels changing. And so those fish can settle down at the bottom. Now you got to bring your baits down to them. So jerkbait is not that easy unless you have a really heavy sinking jerkbait. Back to loading up your jerkbait, bigger hooks, throwing it out, being patient, letting it sink to the bottom. Sure, you can catch fish, but a blade bait, like you said, looks a lot like a jerkbait. A flutter spoon, a jerking, moving piece of metal really mimics a jerking, moving piece of plastic. It's kind of the same bait when you get down to that point. Right. So ideal conditions, give me texture anywhere, give me some water movement from current. Current, if you really think about current, it's going to move those small fish with the current. They're kind of drifting along and you're bringing them to those big bass that are sitting on those points. You can't beat that. That's also great. Again, Rick nailed it. And this is why I love this monster bass idea. You're giving all these baits. If you have a point and you have a fish and it's sitting there waiting for something to swim by a swim jig, swim by a crankbait, swim by a spinner, swim by a jerkbait. You're going to catch fish on all of them if it's done correctly. And that's the reality. We just get to pick our favorite thing and pinpoint what's working the best. So jerkbait is tough to get down. After 20 feet, you're probably not going to present a jerkbait very successful. The difference with a jerkbait is you get to suspend it. It gets to sit there. You get to jerk it. You can call fish another 10, 15 feet up to that 20-foot depth. So if you're fishing in 30 feet of water and they're down low, you start jerking, especially guys that are catching smallies in clear water. If you know they're sitting at 30 feet, fish a jerkbait that's down at 20 feet, rattle it, twitch it, pause it. You're going to get fish to come up and eat it. So that's why they're so effective. They give the fish what they want to see.
Yeah. Hey, so one other thing I got is, you know, Rick did the video, the unboxing for the November box here just the other day. And I just got my box today, and it has this flat line, the flat-sided square bill that Monster Bass is putting out. And I really like that ribbed pattern along the bottom of the bait. I'm wondering if Rick would consider doing that to, you know, his future jerk bait that he's going to put out. Because I think that a little bit of extra vibration along with that metallic paint job, I think is really going to, I think you'd be able to call bass even maybe a little further because, you know, they're sensing things with the lateral line and things like that. So I think possibly having those ribs on that jerk bait, Rick, that might, it might make you stand out a little bit more from everyone else. But I think it's going to give the ability to pull bass a little bit further away, especially like I love using a jerkbait in the spring, and I'm going after the bigger ones. So I think being able to fish in different areas and having the ability to call fish up from a little bit further away than a standard jerkbait, having those ribs on the bottom of that jerkbait might really be something that's beneficial to everybody.
You're spot on. Go ahead, Rick.
Yeah, I was gonna say we have plans to put the ribbed belly on quite a few baits because we were able to measure an increased difference, and we do believe that it is something that is going to call in fish. I can tell you that the new square bill has it for sure. I don't know about. I know there's a new version of the slick stick that's being designed. I don't know if that one has. I haven't seen the mold on that one yet. And then I know we're going to make some changes on the Seeker. But any new bait that comes out, we're going to look to include that on it because I do think that it makes a big difference.
Yeah, I was going to say.
I think that's awesome.
Yeah, I was going to add in saltwater jerk baits, a rip bait like that to fish. Yuzuri, I know that was talked about in the box on their lipless. They've used ribs all their entire body of their jerk baits for years because they're covering such a big, diverse thing of fishing in the ocean. You got to make some noise. You got to get fish to come over. Right. The beauty of a jerk bait and bass fishing specifically is we get really target oriented. So we don't have to do too much more. The jerk bait having those ribs, I think, is a fun thing. It's going to displace some water, and it's going to be a unique noise as that thing twitches and moves through the water. It's going to displace things with this extra ripples. So spot on by adding it, seeing what it does. I'm excited to try some of those things. And the reality is when you fish a jerk bait, Rick touched on it. It really doesn't matter whose it is and what's going on because how unique the movement is of a jerkbait, the fish are going to key into that. And if you twitch it right, you twitch it hard and it makes that noise and that bait drifts off something that sparks that bass, the bass literally can do nothing but go eat it. That's the beauty of fishing a bait that causes a reaction strike.
Yep. Very cool. Hey, before I end this, I just want to pitch our Monster Bass Cares. You can see the Venmo up there right now. This is a way for folks to donate money to a separate account that I in turn use to support veterans and first responder fishing events throughout the country. Right now it's a little slow, so for everyone listening, really, if you have or if you know of any veteran tournaments that are coming up, and I need time. I can't support something next week, but if you give me some time, you know, we all know about shipping. Unfortunately, you know, Rick touched on that too. But you know, if you give me some time, definitely reach out to customer service at Monster Bass. Send them an email with what you are thinking you'd like to have supported by Monster Bass. And then they'll forward that on to me, and I will reach out personally to the veteran or first responder organization that's holding a tournament. And we like to donate Monster Bass boxes. We've done rods. We've done tackle. We've done all kinds of stuff. And as a matter of fact, on Saturday, I'm supporting a a veteran-only tournament at Lake Anna. It's the 10th annual veteran tournament that's going on at Lake Anna here in Virginia. So I'm going down there Saturday with my Monster Bass gear on, and I got some gift codes that we're going to give out to the winners of the tournament. So we really like to do this. We really like to support the vets and first responders. So please, if you know something's going on, reach out to customer service at Monster Bass and, let them know. And then they send that right to me, and then I will be the one reaching out. The more information you can provide, the better. Point of contact, things like that I can reach out to. So please, this is moving along pretty good. We've supported four different tournaments or events this year. Going to be supporting one again on Saturday. So we really want to get this taken off. The one big one we did was for the Fallen Outdoors, big organization throughout the entire United States. And I think we really got ourselves established here in the state of Virginia. And we've already been invited to go to the event for the Fallen Outdoors down in South Carolina in next February. So, yeah, just let me know. And please feel free to donate to support these veteran and first responders events. Sorry, that was long-winded. Over to you, Raphie.
No, it was perfect, and thank you for all the work that you're doing on our behalf. We really appreciate you.
Yes, it's a pleasure. I love doing it. I love talking to these people. It's just fantastic what folks are doing.
Yeah, thank you, Marty. Appreciate everything that you do around this program. Definitely means a lot.
Yes, sir.
Now,
thank you guys.
don't you have?
You guys always do a great show. And what? Go ahead.
I was gonna say, don't you have like a hot date to finish?
Yeah.
No, she's up there watching like Real Housewives of Salt Lake City or something. So I'm content with sitting down in the basement watching Monster Bass live.
There must be like
And
40
she
of them
lets
on the show, right?
I was gonna say it's called Many Housewives of
must
Salt
be.
Lake City.
Yeah, it's pardon my language, but that show is a constant shit show.
All right. I like it.
Can't say I've ever watched it, if I'm going to be honest with you. I mean,
Yeah, sometimes I'm scrolling through the iPad and it's on. So yeah,
stop it. You should just end it right there.
They're not.
no.
Just don't.
I'm not hanging up. I'm letting this happen.
Right?
He hates Santa. He loves the Real Housewives. It's all good.
I just
There
love
you go.
Party Marty.
There you go. Perfect. Hey,
Thanks, Marty.
guys. I appreciate it. Have a great night.
Yeah.
All right. Bye, Marty.
Bye.
Yeah. Since we're on the topic of helping out people, I just want to give a shout out to the, I'm going to pronounce it wrong, but I probably won't, but to Coy Creek High School in St. Augustine. This is a program that, I have a soft spot in my heart for kids, and this is a high school program that's in its third year, and they serve, I believe they serve some underprivileged kids, and they're trying to start a fishing club, and I sent them 25 rods, 25 tackle boxes, 25 things, line, baits, hooks, a whole bunch of stuff to help this program get off the ground, because I'd watched this thing on Facebook play out for a while, and nobody was like, it was like nobody was coming to help them. And finally, I reached out, and I think they're gonna be pretty surprised when this stuff shows up, because I didn't tell them I was sending them everything that they were looking for. I just said I'd send them something. So hopefully they're watching. Yeah. Raphie, how's the chat?
The chat's looking pretty good. Trevor English was in the lead for a while, especially with the Santa Hates Me and the forward-facing haircut line. And Michael Myers was pretty awesome. He had something in there about how he loves Monster Bass and has been a member for 4 years. David Yeska said that he got his October box and he feels like it's not a fishing subscription box so much as it's a fishing tool case. So he was super complimentary. But the winner of the chat is Daniel Pierce, because he knows probably behind the scenes just how bad of a day Fixie is having. And so his comment of I heart Fix is hands down the winner. So congratulations to Daniel Pierce for making Fixie feel a little bit better. Thanks to everyone for your patience and waiting 37 minutes before we finally figured out how to push the button to make us go live on YouTube. And Daniel, email us at marketing@monsterbass.com. Send me your details, and we'll send you out this bag. Congratulations.
Wow. Okay.
It's awesome. I was going to say, I wanted to give just a mention to John Ellis. He said he used to have a ribbed belly 20 years ago. We're talking about our rib bait. So that was a pretty good one. Lots of people have asked, they're talking about how we tie, if we're going to do some kind of a loop knot, if we're tying to the split ring in the front, what the technique that I use. I just tie right to that split ring that the bait provider puts on the front of most of the jerk baits. I found that having a loop knot of some sort isn't as angular on the retrieve. If you get rid of that snap ring, that split ring that's up there, when you twitch, really depending on how that's leaning, that lends to that bait snapping from side to side. And so it's really important to have the deflection that is not consistent. It really puts an inconsistent retrieve. And I think that's an important piece to have on there. Having the bait tied directly to some type of a loop knot that twitches, that pulls, and it can allow some bait movement. And it's important on other baits, but it's more subtle. I also don't like the idea of having my bait kind of wearing and burning into my fluorocarbon when I do twitch it, by having it slide and pinch and burn against that fluorocarbon. So that's kind of my answer of why I do tie to that split ring, snap ring that's on there.
And speaking of split rings, what's your thought on round versus oval?
I like the round. Again, the oval gets to a pinch point. I don't know if the oval's going to settle and then kind of hang up. I found when I'm using big baits and people are asking about swim baits, if I'm twitching a swim bait really far and I have some kind of a snap or the quick change and they're too big and they're oval, that allows the bait sometimes to travel all the way back and foul into its own line. So it's the same kind of thing I find with the jerk bait. Is the round are perfectly fine for me on the jerk baits. I don't need to have the oval, and that the round just is enough inconsistency to really, I'm moving the bait quite a bit. Again, back to being a spaz. I can't sit. Some guys will let their jerk bait twitch, pausing for 10, 15, 20 seconds. If I've got time to like stop and take a drink of something, I'm probably going to find something else to do. So I'm not that patient. That's why drop shot for me versus my wife, a whole different subject of the patience to fish. I would rather fish something else, and I'm a little bit more proactive. Part of it is I'm cold when I'm out there. I'm fishing like you. It's like I got to do something to keep me busy. I hate how cold it is right now. And so I think that's why I like a jerk bait, because I'm moving. Same thing with the flutter spoon, blade bait. I got to keep moving. But snap ring, split ring, round is perfectly fine.
Yeah, I'll be honest. Like, I want to like some of these finesse techniques, but like you, I want to be moving. I want to be covering water. And I don't know, like the idea of just dropping a drop shot.
It's tough. It's hard.
It's tough.
I'll tell you.
It produces though. It produces.
Hands down. And I think that we need to have Kelly on the show in the future to talk about why us as men wait to try something we know works at the end.
Yeah.
When there's pressured water, she can come on and be like, you guys are so dumb. Use it first, catch your fish, and then try something that's harder. It's very intelligent. But I was going to mention, if people haven't used a jerk bait a lot, drop shot a fluke. And if you think about maybe in the wintertime, suspend it a little longer at times and allow that tag line down to your drop shot weight, just be a little bit longer. Nose hook a fluke, which is a soft body jerk bait. Throw it out there. Now I have a finesse. I can let it sink to the bottom. Now I have this dying bait fish that goes and sits on the bottom, but then you can also twitch it and you can move that jerk bait, which is basically a fluke, right through that water column, maybe 18 to 24 inches off the bottom. And you're going to come nose to nose with the fish at some point. So that's a great way to say, okay, like Marty's calling, it's hard to get this jerk bait all the way down to the fish. Nose hook a fluke and throw it out there. And you're going to imitate the same kind of thing, but it's going to be a soft plastic.
good. It's good feedback. Good input. I like that. Today I wanted to roll into a whole thing about the baits. We decided to, when we launched some of these soft plastics, we decided that we were going to, allow everyone to participate in the naming of it, the feedback of it, what changes are we going to make. And lo and behold, I dropped the ball. And I don't have the baits with me. And I walked out of the house. I set them on the table to bring them out, and I carried a bubbly water and left the bag of baits. So I feel like a bit of a dumbass, and so I want to apologize to everyone at home. So here's my promise to you guys. I've got an ask and then a promise. My ask is this. I'd love to hear from who's ever listening. I need a name for a new squarebill. Okay? It's a silent squarebill. It's in production right now. It's been designed. I've got colors. And I've actually got 4 special colors that we'll talk about another time. But Debo from Debo's Fishing is custom is come up with 4 of his custom patterns that he's painted. And we're going to put those in the box. In addition to our new colors. But I need a name for this bait. And so if you guys could come up with some names, put them in the chat for me. I'm going to look at every single one of them. Or you can email me. I'll let you email me direct. I'm probably going to regret this, but you can email me at rick@monsterbass.com. And all I'm asking for is the name, what you think we should name the brand new squarebill crankbait. And I'm gonna comb through those names. I'm gonna come up with a list, and I'm gonna share that list next week. And at the same time, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna reveal the name of each one of the soft plastics. I'm gonna name the craw. I'm gonna name the craw and the worm. The third one, I don't know if that's gonna make the cut. I haven't decided yet. I'm still combing through all the data. But I'm also gonna I'm gonna tell you what the 4th bait will be. Because I think it's a pretty exciting one, and I think you guys are going to really love this one. And I'm just trying to decide what box to put it in. It's either going to come in the Z-Man's in January. So it's either going to be February or March. There's going to be 2 brand new baits, February or March. And February, this new bait is not a collaboration with anyone. This is strictly ours. It's a brand new mold. No one's seen it before. I think you guys are gonna be excited. I'm talking with I'm not gonna tell you the bait, but you're gonna fish it with probably a weighted 3/0 screw lock swim bait hook. It probably gives you a little bit on it, but I'll talk more about that next week. We'll reveal the names, but if you've got a name for a brand new squarebill, give it to me in the chat. Email it to me at rick@monsterbass.com. We'll go through it next week. And if I pick your name that you suggest for the bait, I will give you, I don't know, what should we give away, Raphie?
I have no idea.
Should we let
I have no idea because I was getting tripped up on the fact that I think that ticking the top of stuff actually in the chat did just name the squarebill. His suggestion was calling it the forward-facing squarebill, which I think crushes the game.
Forward-facing squarebill. How am I going to get Jeremy to make a video on that?
He can't have it on his boat. He committed.
Right.
He could never have.
He's like, I hate this.
Can't use it. No,
Did anybody,
can't do it.
speaking of forward-facing, did anyone see some guy caught a 14-pounder down in Texas? And the whole chat is all about when's he going to own up to catching it on forward-facing sonar, and could he have caught this
dumb.
without it? And I'm like,
who cares?
Yeah, could he have done it with? Why couldn't he have done this with a shiner? Why did he have to use one of those fake baits? Like, come on. So
no, my downward-facing sonar is perfectly fine, but your forward-facing one is not acceptable.
Right.
I love that. My favorite argument ever. Too bad.
Yeah. Or congratulations on catching a 14-pound fish. Nice job. That's pretty incredible.
All right. Well, let's listen. I've learned a lot today. I've learned a lot about line. That tidbit that you gave me from Tactical Bassing about the line memory was really, really interesting.
It's crazy.
Definitely the color patterns in what to throw when it's sunny versus cloudy. Hooks are important. And I think cadence, I don't know that we talked enough about cadence because there's so many different ways to do this and there's no real right way. I think that's what makes the jerkbait great, right? Like you can just be as inconsistent as you want because this thing's just creating this erratic motion in the water and you're just trying to get attention of fish who are lethargic and just looking for a meal and they're tired of looking at the same stuff. So it's almost the perfect bait because you just throw that thing and unless you're just ripping it back, which isn't going to really solve.
I'll tell you, ripping it back as fast as you can in the spring, summer, it totally works. And even in the fall, if fish are keyed into something that's moving fast, I think it's the perfect. We need to get Raphie one of these because he could literally cast it and jerk that thing as fast as he wanted all the way back. Or he could snap a couple times, pause, get a drink, relax. It all comes down to what you're saying is there's really no wrong way to do it. I will tell you, a lot of people shy away from them. They're tough at times because people don't talk about it a lot. You don't see it being fished a lot, but professionals fish these relentlessly to catch fish. And it's not shared a bunch where people are like, oh, I went out and I fished. Do you ever recall anybody with their PB on a jerkbait that you've shared on the show in the past?
No.
That is one thing I'll tell you. They're not known for huge trophy bass. And that's an interesting piece of like why and what's going on. Sometimes the reactions strike with a bait that a smaller fish is able to eat. A smaller fish will beat a bigger fish to it. And that's just from underwater coverage. You're going to catch oftentimes more quantity than overall great quality. Doesn't mean you're still not going to put fish in the boat. But jerkbaits, you can win tournaments with jerkbaits for sure. But a lot of times people are like, I'm just here for trophy seeking.
Yeah.
I'm not going to throw a jerkbait. And that sometimes puts it into a subcategory.
Yeah.
I'm all about it. I've caught some really good fish on them. So I hope people use them. I hope we get some feedback. That new one coming out, when you're talking about different jerkbaits, it's a successful bait. So hopefully people from this show are a little more challenged to, hey, I'm going to go out and they're ready to go and find some fish with them.
Yeah. Thanks for that knowledge drop. All right. Let's give away these bags. So I know, Raphie, you gave away yours. Fix, why don't you give away mine?
All right.
He's gonna do the voice. Do the voice, Fix.
Yeah. Horseshit. That means.
Okay, here we go. No, I'm not doing it. All right. The winner today is Beth Langston.
Oh,
M27318. I had a feeling.
True story. How did that? That's amazing that you did it because she's so pissed with my customer service department.
Oh, is she really?
Yeah, she she signed up for the SMS list, and for whatever reason, she's not getting her Free Bait Friday text, and somehow she escalated it to me. I got an email. It got escalated to me a couple days ago. Oh, no. So of course, the first thing I asked was, "Well, what's your phone number?" Right? I'm looking at my customer service thread, and they've been going back and forth trying to solve it. And it turns out, and don't ask me how. Listen, I'm not here to point fingers. Turns out she's got more than one phone number in her profile, and so she's getting some text messages, but not all of them. And so anyway, so it's just so random because I know the name. Beth, we got it all figured out. You're going to start getting text messages. So you're out. You should be getting Free Bait Friday on Friday. And congratulations that Fixie picked you. That's amazing. So, hey, I hope you're not pissed anymore. See, I solved your problem.
See, now she's happy.
Yeah. And Fix gave her some free stuff. Good job.
Yeah,
Wow,
she also wrote the fixes in. So I think she thinks we're cheating.
Wait, did she really?
Yeah, she did.
No way.
Yeah,
The
but
game
his
is not
name
fixed.
his name is Fix. So it's a play on words.
I'm not that smart.
Yeah.
All right,
See,
Beth.
Jared, it's because your last name is Fix, and
is that what it
yeah.
is? Oh, God.
Can
I've
you guys
never heard
explain
that
to
one
me
before.
that? Can you explain that to me offline?
Yeah.
After,
Okay.
after the
Okay.
show. We're almost done. Hey, I'm just going to get mine away. Justin Andrew, I think it's Justin Andrus in the chat. We're supposed to have a call. I'm going to challenge if there's a female angler next show. I really would love some female anglers to call in. I'm going to throw that out there as the gauntlet. I'm going to reward the first female caller. They're going to win the prize next time I'm on. But Justin Andrus right now is in the chat. He just said, I really want one of those bags. He kind of asked for it. And guess what? I'm going to be your Santa Claus, knowing Raphie is so mad at Santa Claus. Justin, you just won a bag of baits. Happy
Amazing.
Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, Christmas,
Festivus.
Festivus.
For the rest of us.
Yeah.
We're doing it.
All right.
All right.
All right. Well, guys, thanks a lot. We had a great show today. Next week, I don't know that next week is solidified, is it? Did we? Are the boys coming on, or is it?
Mikey Balls.
Well, next week is not solidified, but we do have one confirmed guest. It's just a question of whether or not you want to move it around.
Well, I do need to take care of the Black Friday thing. So, all right, guys, either way, we're going to have a great show for you next week. And you're not going to want to miss this one. And we're going to make sure you don't, because we'll make sure we set this to public so that you can find it. And my dog, he's still here. So, good stuff. So, Chris, thanks a lot for being on the show. Raphie, thank you. Fix, thank you as always. And to all you guys that tuned in today, appreciate your patience, appreciate your support. Did I say appreciate?
I said appreciate.
Appreciate. We appreciate your support and your love for Monster Bass, and we'll see you next week. Thanks a lot.
Sweep the leg. Oh, yes.